I'd like to call to order the regular city council meeting of Tuesday, May the 25th to order. As always, we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The city of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. Just before we get going into the formal agenda, I do have one proclamation to read this evening. It is Beaumont Pride Week from June 4th to 13th, 2021. Whereas on June 4th to 13th, Beaumont celebrates the diversity that strengthens our community, including individuals who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, queer, two-spirited, and all other sexual orientations and gender identities. And whereas the intent of Pride Week is to celebrate diversity in Beaumont and to be a safe and welcoming place for people of all sexual orientations and gender identities to attend school, to work, to raise a family, to start a business, and to live. And whereas Beaumont Pride promises to provide hope and support for our employees, our youth, and other community members who experience bullying and harassment based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. And whereas the Rainbow Pride flag is raised in honor of our LGBTQ2+ employees and community members. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim June 4th to 13th, 2021 as Beaumont Pride Week in the city of Beaumont, Alberta, dated this 19th day of May, 2021. So it brings us to adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, City Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration has one amendment to the agenda, removing item 14B, the economic development update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a member of council willing to move the agenda as amended? Councillor Hendricks.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Use your reaction buttons, and that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Brings us to item 3, the consent agenda. And I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, regular council meeting minutes of May 11th, 2021. Item 5B, regular council meeting minutes of May 18th, 2021. Item 8B, council policy C46, snow and ice policy. Item 8C, council policy C47, utility fiscal policy. Item 12A, municipal affairs 2020 MSI funding confirmation letter. And item 14A, regional initiatives update, that council accept the regional initiatives update as information. Discussion on the motion. Does anybody have any objection to any of those items? Okay, I still see votes up, so I'm not sure if there's hands up or if... Okay, seeing none, no discussion on the motion, call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimously, which brings us to the open forum. And I understand we have one presenter this evening, or one group of presenters from Star Catholic this evening, correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we do have 4 presenters that are coming in for the open forum. We have Michelle Lammer, the board chair, Liz Taylor Cyrus, local school board trustee, Nola Anthony, school council chair, and Charlie Bouchard, the superintendent. And I will start letting them into the meeting now, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. All participants have been added into the meeting.
Good evening and welcome to the representatives from Star Catholic for joining us on our council meeting tonight. Just a reminder, the open forum gives you 5 minutes of floor time with council. So without further ado, if you could just get you to introduce yourselves and then you can present your presentation. Thanks.
Liz Taylor Cyrus, Beaumont. Hi, so I am the Beaumont Ward Trustee for Star Catholic Schools. On behalf of Catholic education supporters here in Beaumont, I'm here to advocate to the Mayor and Council to commit to the servicing of a school site or to commit in writing to service a school site should a high school project be announced. Our number one capital project for Star Catholic Schools is a Catholic high school in Beaumont. We cannot receive Alberta infrastructure funding for a Catholic high school until we have a commitment from the City of Beaumont of a service school land site. This is what we need. So now I will introduce our school council chair, Nola Anthony.
Thanks, Liz. Hi, I'm Nola Anthony, and I'm the school council chair of both Academy St. Andre Academy as well as Mother du Ville a school, which is the middle school, Catholic middle school here. Our parents are demonstrating the desire for a Catholic high school through communication to our local trustee and letters of support to the Star Catholic School Board. The Beaumont community needs another high school, and there is a growing population of junior and senior high students in Beaumont that are Catholic, and they need a Catholic high school to attend.
Hello, my name is Michelle Lemaire, and I am the board chair for Star Catholic. I have been in conversation with this mayor and council and the previous mayor and council on supporting and meeting the educational needs of the young families in Beaumont through the advocacy of school facilities. The barrier we face is clearly the lack of a service site, and this must come to the attention of the public. We are a partner to you in meeting the educational needs of your community, and we are working hard to bring to light the imminent educational needs in your community. We are working hard at this. Our local MLA Rutherford has also prioritized a high school for this community. Next, I would like to introduce our superintendent, Mr. Charlie Bouchard, to discuss the capital plan requirements of Alberta education and Alberta infrastructure. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and I've seen and met most of you. Star Catholic appreciates the city providing us with the current letter for submission to the province, which states, the City of Beaumont is committed to work with St. Thomas Aquinas, Roman Catholic Separate Regional Division number 38, to have a school site ready for a potential high school in the near future. The city will continue to work with developers to finalize the requirements for a future school site, including the regulatory requirements to create a municipal reserve parcel and the construction and provision of related infrastructure servicing necessary to service the school site. The city looks forward to continued collaboration with all parties involved to bring a high school to Beaumont. Although we appreciate the cooperative nature of the letter and the statements therein, it does not meet the requirements for submission outlined in provincial guidelines. In communications with your city's senior management, we have mentioned two deficiencies identified by Alberta Infrastructure. The letter ideally would state the subdivision and area structure plan, or at minimum, to service a site within a year should a project be awarded. As the letter stands, the province will not award Beaumont a new high school. The letter provided, in essence, stalls and prohibits the province from awarding Beaumont a new project or school. This does not help the City of Beaumont nor Star Catholic Schools. Trustee Sirwa.
Thank you, Charlie. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I respectfully request that the City of Beaumont revisits its commitment to servicing a school site, or at a minimum, strengthening the wording in their letter, such that it is acceptable to the Government of Alberta and will ensure the City of Beaumont is considered for a new school build. That's what we need. Thank you.
Okay. I do appreciate you coming in, and we've had this conversation before, and the needs haven't changed, and I'm unfortunately I'm in the position of having to deliver the same message that we delivered back in April. We don't have any current parcels that are available. We don't have any land that's currently in municipal reserve that's large enough to sit on a school site. We don't have any developers that are committing to bring them in a time frame where we could actually write that letter. And until we get those, we're just not in a position. Like, we totally get it and we totally agree with you that this high school is needed, it's necessary, it's off to go, it needs to go, it's one of the priorities. But the reality is, we need a piece of land to put it on to be able to commit to doing what you asked. Unless you're prepared to come to the table with some dollars to help us purchase and finance the servicing of it.
So if I could ask a question.
Sure.
So at your municipal level, because you know that this is a need in your community, what is your kind of advocacy that you are doing? Like, what are your steps that you're taking to get to that, where we need to be at? So I'm just curious about that. Like, we have our advocacy plan and we have our stakeholders that we're consulting with. So what would the city of Beaumont be doing? Thank you.
Well, I'll let the CAO weigh in if I go wrong here, but I know from the conversations that I've personally been involved with the developers, one of the first things we ask them is where's the school site in your plans to, when you're developing a land like a LAN or LaRev, when are your plans to bring those sites into fruition? So that, because we do recognize that Star Catholic needs a high school and we are getting pressure from Black Gold for school sites as well. And so, yeah, that conversation is always front of mind when we're dealing with developers, because that's who we're going to have to get to develop to give us the municipal parcels that we need to service your need. Mike?
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor Stewart. And just to add to that, Michelle, what we've done in the past is work with those developers. They'll typically, in their structure plan and neighborhood structure plan, typically identify phased in approaches. So what we've been able to do, and we're successful with the school that's being built right now, is juggle those phases. So rather than start at the north end, have them start at the south end, or wherever wherever the school site has been identified in that subdivision. So to this date, the developers have been fairly cooperative, but as the letter said, and I feel for you, it's tough because we don't control that. We don't own the land. We don't install the servicing. That's all done by the developer, but we are in contact with them on a regular basis. I know that's not what you wanted to hear.
And like I say, the only way to make it move faster is to buy land and service it ourselves. And that's a financial position that I don't think we're in. Councilor Barnhart, comment, question?
Thank you, Mayor. And I know that generally when we have an open forum, we don't really have a lot of information in front of us. We're hearing this for the first time. And, so I just want to make sure that the representatives here don't feel that we're not engaged in this conversation. We definitely would like to be. I personally would love to be hearing more about your plans and what your plans, how we can help you with them. But this is the first time you've come to us with this, and I haven't seen the letter that was sent to you until today. So I apologize if I don't sound prepared. But my question would be to you, if you don't mind my asking, have you had any conversations with the other school boards in Beaumont? And are you considering any collaborative efforts? I know we've done that with elementary schools. Some may say that was successful. Some may say there were challenges with that. But personally, I'd like to know, is that a possibility? Because we're being asked by two school boards, probably the third, to have a school site ready. So what is your answer to that? And I don't know who to direct the question to, but perhaps the superintendent or the chair.
Yeah, so in the past, we definitely have. And there is the one elementary school there, Academy St. Andre, and I'm trying to remember the other side.
And Thoreau.
Right, Meadows. So anyhow, that was a great project that went really well. And we did put ourselves out there to work with the Francophone board. And of course, that kind of got out of our control and we lost that opportunity. Now we are aware that Black Gold has just added a high school to their capital plan. So we really haven't had the opportunity to meet with them or have a conversation with them. But that just came to our knowledge. So we have partnerships in other communities that we work on, and if that is an option, that can be looked at. But right now, I've always understood that any kind of parcel of land in Beaumont is very small. Like there is an issue with the parcels of land. So for a partnership, you know, a P3 or something like that, I'm not sure. But again, we all have to work together, right? And we're here to definitely advocate for, you know, for your community and however to make that work. So I did hear that some weren't sure of all the communication that's gone back and forth between our board and the city. We can definitely put a package together with all the details, and the timeline of how we've worked through that. And like I said, I have sat down with some of the councillors and the city. It wasn't a full board on both sides, but we did have the conversation just with the numbers, you know, just reiterating the numbers of and the needs of that community and the growing population of young people. And there's quite a band of young people that are going to need a high school. So we can put a package together if that is something that the mayor and council would like. And I'll pass it over to Trustee Stirwa if she has anything else to comment on.
Well, I was just going to say that the people of Beaumont, they're really, I don't want to say angry because they're not, but I could see it possibly happening because these people, some children are going to Edmonton, Sherwood Park, and they really want a school. And I don't know what else to say, but
yeah, we're hearing it too. And to be honest with you, if we had the ability to write that letter and make that commitment right this second, we would. But we just we can't commit something that we don't have, unfortunately. Because I hear the pressure, and I've been lobbying Brad to see what he can do to get us on the list in advance of these school sites becoming available and doing some things. Because I want to see Star Catholic get a high school. I want to see Black Gold get the schools they need. But right now, if Black Gold came, the answer would still be the same. We don't have any land, and we need development to catch up with our ability to produce it. So I see Councillor Mughouse Swain's got his hand up.
Thank you, Worship, and appreciate Councillor Barnhart's comments here. I think the challenge, and I respect this is your avenue, and you've only got 5 minutes. I'm sure you would have appreciated more time, but that's where we're at. But I think what we need to go. Yes, it'd be great to put that package together, but this is something that, you know, we're in year 4 here of our council, and I know Councillor Hendricks has been pushing for these joint conversations. And I think, you know, a takeaway is, so no, we're not able to write a letter tonight. We don't have the land. I think you heard that message. But in order to get this work done, we're going to need to sit down and work through this together. And we're not going to get there in 5-minute increments on a council meeting. And I'm not disparaging you guys. This is absolutely the right approach to come here and share that message. But I think we do need to sit back and discuss with your full group and our group a conversation for us to start to work through this. It doesn't mean that, you know, we've got a site that we can get to, but I think the only way we can move forward with this is to get out of the 5-minute increments and sit down and come up with a strategy. I think we have shown in the past, this council, we have shown the ability and the commitment to advance where we can. And the recent Francophone school, as the example, the province came forward and said, this is where they want, what can you do? And so as a city, we did help move forward to push for that because we knew that was something that was needed. And so we've shown historically that we're willing to do that. I think we just need to sit down and have these conversations outside of this 5-minute increment. So that would be my only recommendation. But I do thank you guys for coming here, and I appreciate it might be a frustrating process where, you know, we said you've only got 5 minutes. But that's why I think we need to kind of take this away from a council meeting and then have those conversations and then bring that back to a more formal decision ultimately if we ever get there. So I just wanted to thank you guys for coming in tonight. I know it's a very tight window here, but your comments certainly resonate, and we hear them every day. Like the mayor said, we know that then we need to build skills here, and we're trying to do that. So thanks for your time, and I hope you guys can work with our administration to identify those areas for us to be able to work offline to work through this. So that's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
CAO?
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't want this and thank you very much, Councilor Moncton. Probably said what I'm trying to say much better. If you remember the meeting we had, Charlie, Michelle, we talked about your timeline of being 2 to 3 years, and we were reasonably confident that we're going to be ready. I think we're going to be ready. Liz, your comment about our kids going out of the city to go to school, that we're on top of that, completely understand that. Every time somebody drives out of our city, they take their wallet with them. And from an economic development, from a business development, from a community development, we want them to stay. So we want them to grow up and go to school in Beaumont. So we are working right alongside you to make this happen. And I'm confident that in 3 years, we're going to have a school site for Black Gold and for Star Catholic. So I think we're going to get there. This provincial system, and I get it, they won't move until you have a commitment of a service lot. I just don't know who can meet those requirements 3 years ahead of time. It's really difficult, but we will keep working like Councillor Moncton suggested.
And to echo Councillor Moncton-Swain's suggestion, perhaps another meeting would be in order. To help move this forward? Would that be something that you would be interested in? Charlie?
I guess I'm not sure I'm seeing the point of a meeting if there's no solution. So, I mean, we can get together and say it would be nice to have a piece of land, and you can say in 3 years you might. I guess the question that we have is, if the province were to announce a project, are you saying that you couldn't service a piece of land in 1 year?
CAO? I'm pretty sure that's what we're saying, but
That's it. With the way things sit today, that's correct.
So I don't know that there's a point in meeting unless there's a solution to that somehow. Otherwise, we're just shaking hands and
Agreed.
It's not productive. So
Yeah,
we need a solution, but I don't see one in sight unless you guys can make that happen somehow with your developers.
we are trying. Michelle?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that if we are meeting again, to bring in the developers. Like, let them know the urgency of the situation. And surely by putting a school in a spot, it's going to bring on the development. Is it not? Like, it would be.
Oh yeah, they love it.
Yeah, like it would
property
absolutely
values.
help with their own development. So maybe they need to hear from us. Maybe that's the kind of meeting that we can have. We can also have Black Gold attend that same meeting, because it's the final decision of the actual school facility is Alberta Infrastructure. So they make that decision based on the needs of the community. And I mean, that's how we have met with the previous mayor and council, with all the partners, like with both school divisions, because we're advocating, we're trying to meet the needs of that community, and it's fair. It's a very fair way to go about it. So, that would be, we can look at that too.
Fair enough. Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Moncton-Swain, and then I'll leave it to one last opportunity for the members of Star Catholic to say something, and then we'll have to wrap this up and move it on. Councillor Hendricks.
Your Worship, thank you, and thanks for all who've attended here this evening. And yes, I too was surprised by the letter. The advocating for a new school site is that process has been going on for years with multiple councils, and we have assembled land through MDPs and area structure plans with developers. Plains Royer, as you know, is the site really for a high school of this magnitude. We had at the beginning of this term talked with a developer about phasing his land so that we can get the utilities to that corner and then get you operational. And ultimately, that's the issue. I don't see a harm in having a meeting. Charlie, I think it's important to have one since that we haven't had any conversation until now in this term, at least with this council, and be happy to look at trying to figure out a solution here. There are solutions to development problems, and sometimes you got to be a bit creative, and we'll have to see what we can do. But we have been assembling land for years, so that under the MR process, right, to allow for this to happen. in the area structure plans and the MVP. So we bring the developer in, bring you fellows and ladies in, bring the package in, and see what we can do to solve it. And to the mayor's point, I mean, if you put a school in that site, that's got to be pretty enticing, you know, for a developer to say, hey, let's switch up our phasing a bit. This has got to help us in selling lots. So, and that's really where we've been going with councils for years, is heading in that direction for that fairly significant infrastructure build in that corner. So let's have the meeting before the end of this term, and let's get this meeting with our developer and others, and let's have a chat. I mean, all ears, and let's get everything on the table. Let's figure this out. So look forward to that. Thank you.
Councilor Goswin.
Just very briefly, and echo everything Councillor Hendrick said. You know, Mr. Bouchard asked why have a meeting. It's to avoid having this meeting in 2 years, and to avoid saying, look, 5 minutes, let's see what we can do. The point of that is to get together, bring the parties together, and we can work towards it. No, we can't give you a letter today. We wish we could, but we can't. We just don't have the land. It's as simple as that. But if we get in a room and we bring the right people, then we can work towards that 2 to 3 year plan that Councillor CAO Schwartz spoke about. So that's why I see the benefit of it. We'll leave that to you guys. But that's what I thought there'd be value in that conversation.
Okay. So I'm going to leave that task in the hands of our CAO to check with planning and see where we can go from there in terms of the developers in the meeting, etc. So I'll leave that task with him. Is there any final comments anybody would like to make? I think we've hit the horse.
I'll just make a comment. I really appreciate that, you know, there's goodwill, you know, to go forward. So I definitely appreciate that. And yeah, absolutely. If we can come together and just put everything out there, and maybe there's some new people in the room that have some creative thoughts on how to move forward, we'd really appreciate that. So just to be sure, so we'll leave it up to the City of Beaumont to make that meeting time and that invitation.
Okay.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, excellent.
And we do appreciate you coming in, and we agree with you. We're not trying to roadblock the situation, but our hands are certainly a little bit tied at the moment to be able to provide what you need.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
There's lots of opportunity, so.
Sorry. So this meeting will be before the end of June.
That will depend on the, first of all, the willingness of the developer to participate and their availability. But we will try and get it done before you go off on your nice vacation for the summer.
Okay, thank you.
Because we'll all be vacationing by then.
We're taking the summer off? I don't know. I didn't think we were doing that this year. All right. Once again, I do appreciate you coming in though, and raising the awareness of this issue, because it's a need, and we are hearing it just like you are from our residents. So hopefully we can get something moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, that brings us to item 6, public hearings. There are none. We have no registered presentations this evening. Brings us to business item 8A, City of Beaumont Armorial Bearings.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council and the public. This evening, I'm bringing forward a recommendation that council rescind its motion from July 24th, 2018 regarding armorial bearings and direct administration to discontinue related work. This project was initiated at council's direction. Since then, a number of steps in the process to develop armorial bearings have taken place, including acceptance of the city's application by the Canadian Heraldic Authority and a consultation with the Beaumont and District Heritage Society. In 2020, the authority provided city administration with conceptual options for consideration before proceeding with the design. Administration proposed to Committee of the Whole a strategy of further engagement with the public and Indigenous groups before selecting final concepts. However, in recent conversations with a consultant that specializes in Indigenous engagement, some concerns have come to our attention. In particular, the consultant cautioned that armorial bearings may be associated with the colonial history, and asking Indigenous peoples for their input could negatively impact the city's efforts to build relationships with First Nations and Métis groups. Proceeding without Indigenous representation in the armorial bearings would be counter to the city's municipal strategic plan, in particular Pillar 6, welcoming diversity and celebrating our cultural heritage. Additionally, it could be seen as contrary to the principles of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, in particular addressing the ongoing legacies of colonialism that have harmed Indigenous peoples' cultures. For these reasons, administration recommends that the city not proceed further. Thank you.
Fair enough. And I'm not get this one is near and dear to council's heart. So before I ask anybody are you willing to move the motion, I'm going to open it up to questions and discussion before we make a motion on this particular item. So is there members of council that have questions for Mr. Berezowski this evening on this, or comments? Councilor Barnhart, followed by Councilor Stout.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Berezowski. I was surprised when I opened this one up and started reading it. I really wasn't expecting that. I can understand the hesitation and why it's being said, but I guess my question is, where does the consultant have experience that this has happened, or is it just this could happen? Like, it seems like someone has their black hat on and is saying this is a worst case scenario. Has that happened somewhere, or is it just surmising this could happen?
So the consultant, the members of their staff are First Nations and Métis, I would point that out. But also when they provided that feedback to us, I also checked with the Canadian Heraldic Authority, and they have said that there has been in other situations, there have been circumstances where organizations have consulted with Indigenous groups, and they have had a very negative response to it. So the short answer is it could happen. This is not saying with certainty that it would. However, the possibility exists. And in light of that possibility and the work that the city is trying to do and council has been trying to do to build stronger relationships, that's why we're advising that we not continue.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councilor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, this and through you to Mr. Berezowski, or admin. This also comes as a complete surprise to me as well. Certainly, I really kind of wanted to reiterate what Councillor Barnhart has said. She kind of asked the same question as me, but I know. So what I'm going to go to is the RFD there, and I just noticed the very conditional language here, quoting from you. This request for input might be negatively received. Engaging with Indigenous communities regarding a symbol that may be perceived could undermine. So it's all very conditional. This is something that maybe on a bad day, in the worst circumstances possible, might happen. I also noticed that the quote here, the Canadian Heraldic Authority advises that the reception from Indigenous communities varies from positive to negative. So it seems to me that what you're telling me is that, or what the Canadian Heraldic Authority is telling us is that, yeah, you might get a positive reaction just as much as you might get a negative one, which is what I'd hope for, of course. Mm-hmm. So I'm surprised that we're discontinuing, that we're proposing, that the recommendation is to discontinue this work before we've encountered this possible outcome. I mean, yes, certainly if we conducted the public engagement and then found that, yes, we were getting negative feedback, then that would be a different story. But we haven't encountered it yet. It's just a matter of conjecture at this point, as far as I can see.
Certainly, that is, we don't know, of course, without confirming that. However, the very act of doing the consultation could undermine the relationships that we're trying to build. Now, considering that we have not built any formal relationships with any Indigenous groups at this time, I think we felt that it was the responsible thing was to bring it to council that do they want to make this the first formal engagement that they have with Indigenous peoples?
And
When
I
there's
sort of,
when
sorry,
there
go ahead.
is this possibility that it could be negatively received.
And I sort of, I'm going to echo your comments there. I think we're just starting on the reconciliation journey with the First Nations groups that are both within and surrounding Beaumont. And I really don't, I want to, in my mind, perhaps this is the kind of thing that we want to build a relationship first and then ask them if they would like to participate with us and go down this path. Because we can't predict the outcome. Like, I don't really want this to be perceived negatively in the community. This is the type of thing that's supposed to be community building, but I will turn it over to Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
First, I just want to acknowledge and say thank you to administration for asking the question. I think that shows a lot as an organization that we are now thinking about this. 3-4 years ago, we probably just would have gone ahead and done it. So thank you for that. And I think a pretty courageous recommendation in front of us to tell us to cancel it. Thank you for going through that process. Everything you said, Mr. Berezowski, in terms of the sheer act of actually asking the question. And I know that that's kind of tough to wrap your head around. And unfortunately, and I know we couldn't have got the agenda any earlier, but when we got it on Thursday, I reached out to a couple of elders who I would normally seek counsel for on this type of thing, and just not available until now. So I don't have any great perspective to bring to this. I also recognize that asking one Indigenous person, 10 Indigenous people, a larger group, no one is going to speak on behalf of all Indigenous people on this. So there's nothing that's going to be. I know Councillor Stout, you're looking for there's a bunch of may or coulds and all that sort of stuff, but I don't think there's anything that's ever going to be definitive here. So I think for me, I would put the question back, Councillor Stout, this was your initial motion, and I would ask it of all of council, but how important is the Amur bearings to this council? And if it is, then sure, let's have that conversation. And maybe if it's not as important on the priority list, this is something that once we've started to establish some relationships with some nations in Treaty 6 and Métis Nation Region 4 here, that we start having those conversations as part of that piece. So that's the question I would pose. I know there's no motion on the floor, so I won't speak to it, but I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we're, as an organization, thinking about this. So thank you, Mr. Berezowski.
Okay, so I see no further requests to speak. So let's start the debate. So I'll put the motion on the floor. The council rescind the July 24th, 2018 motion to seek armorial bearings from the Canadian Crown and direct administration to discontinue the work related to the development of armorial bearings, and open it up for questions, comments, and debates. We'll let Councilor Monkoff-Swain. Do you mind if I let Councilor Danlock go first, even though you chimed in?
Yeah, I was just trying to fill the awkward silence. Definitely go to Councilor Danlock.
Councilor Danlock.
I'll be ready when ready.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, Councilor Monkoff-Swain. Let me go first. Just a quick question. I guess I was a little surprised by this as well too, as Councilor Stout probably is, only in the sense of the potential conflict with the First Nations people as outlined in the RFD. So I guess Mr. Berezowski had a comment saying, I understand where he's coming from, suggesting, is this our first way to reach out to this community as a council? We haven't had a relationship with the Treaty 6 area First Nation people for in our term yet, and I'm sensitive to what he's suggesting there, but I'm also wondering, well, perhaps by actually going out to seeing them and asking them this topic, it would show, I think, the same courage this RFD says, saying we need to be sensitive to the potential people here. Could we not go out to them and ask them, as our first conversation with them, saying, we're thinking of doing this, how do you feel about this? I want to be sensitive to their issues, but at the same time, we need to talk to them and see what the people in our area really are concerned about. So I'm kind of split right now which way to go on this motion. I do see Councillor Stout's intention of having a memorial for our city, and I want to be sensitive to their potential issues outlined in the RFD. So we haven't asked the question yet of the people who could be sensitive to this. So I'm kind of curious how we could actually reach out to them as a show of good faith, saying, you know, what do you think of, how do you feel about this? It is our first contact with you, as recognized in earlier conversations, but maybe it's a great way to start a conversation, saying we're trying to be sensitive on this issue. How do you feel about it? If we get a huge pushback, that's the answer. If we get a conciliation that's saying they're okay with it, that helps us too. So I'm not sure I helped with the discussion here, but I understand where both sides are coming from. I'm trying to get my head around which way to go on this one. So thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Councillor Monkhoff-Swain, followed by Councillor Stout.
Yeah, thank you. So I am in support of this motion to cancel it. I personally, supported the conversation to go around the armorial bearings, but it certainly wasn't a passion of mine. I think there are many other things that we should be engaging with both the Treaty 6 First Nations and Métis Region 4 here on. Start off with the land acknowledgement. There are multiple things that we could be having this conversation with, and I don't think this should be the first conversation that we reach out to for all the reasons stated above. Doesn't mean that this is precluding that this is potentially going to be perceived as negatively. I just think there are other issues that we should be coming at to engage from a reconciliation perspective. I wish I had an opportunity to speak to an elder, at least to get some advice around this. But for me, without that, I will be supporting this motion and think that let's build up those relationships. And as part of that, then we can have that discussion and then potentially bring this back. I don't think there is an urgent need to have an armorial bearing here, and I think we should focus on other priority issues. So those are my 2 cents, but completely respect folks on other sides on this matter. So I'll leave it there, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Just wanted to ask a clarifying question then. And building on what Councillor Monkhoff-Swain has said in a way. So we're nearly 3 years into this process since July 24th, 2018, when it was initiated. So if the motion passes, what happens to the request to be granted armorial bearings? Is that cancelled altogether, or is it just put on ice for the time being until a more suitable occasion or circumstances allow?
I haven't clarified what the outcome would be with the Heraldic Authority, but so far the commitment has been financially, the commitment has been very, very negligible or very minimal. So it is something that we could, if we determined that we wanted to pursue this at another time, we could do.
So it is possible to delay it rather than cancel it altogether. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Mr. Berezowski?
I couldn't say that with certainty tonight, no.
Okay, but that would be something, something to consider. In the event that we did then delay it to reopen it at some later date, and Councillor Monkhoff-Swain referred to other issues that we might engage First Nations on as a priority ahead of this. Do we have any feeling for what length of time we're I guess I'm thinking on my feet here. Do we have any feeling for when we would engage First Nations communities on another issue?
Your Worship, sorry, Councillor?
And then that thus gives me some idea of what the schedule for bringing this back might be.
Your Worship, through Your Worship to Councillor Stout, I really couldn't make a prediction at this point. I don't know what other initiatives we may pursue at this point. This is just the one thing that I've been engaged on.
Okay, thank you. So we don't know whether we can cancel it or delay it, and if we do delay it, we don't know how long the delay will be. Is potentially indefinitely from what I'm hearing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to speak in favor and echo Councillor Monkhoff-Swain's comments. I think we're very early in I said it before, we're very early in our relationships with the Indigenous nations, or both within our community and around us. And I think the risks outweigh the gains that could be had by doing the armorial bearings. And I'm not precluding the fact that we may, in in time in the future, come back to armorial bearings. But I think we're better off building these relationships so that they're involved and they want to be part of the process and move forward with this. But I think we need to focus. We've done a lot of little baby steps over the last couple of years, but I think we need to focus on building those relationships so that the applications will go in strong and everybody will feel represented by them, just going forward. So that's where I'm sitting. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I will be also voting in favor of this motion. And I would have a hard time coming back to it at a later date, knowing that it offends some people, even if it's a few people. If I know something is not taken the way it was intended, then I think we have an issue to deal with in terms of how can we represent our community in a way that is symbolic and represents all people. If this is not the way, then I think we have to find another way. So I think there's a lot of history with a coat of arms, and I think that is part of the issue. I wish I had been smart enough to figure that out before, but now knowing what I know, that it does offend some people, I would think it makes sense not to support this at this time.
Councillor Ryan, I was waiting your hands up. Are you wanting to speak again or? Okay, cool. All right, so I see no further requests to speak.
Sorry, my head was, yes, I would like to just add one more little thing.
Oh, sorry, my fault. Sometimes I misinterpreted. Go ahead.
I shook my head at the wrong time and nodded it in the wrong time. I think one thing I can appreciate Councillor Stout is saying here is the unknown. Okay, when are we going to do that? Council hasn't directed administration. You know, we have these nice words in our strategy, and we have land acknowledgement, all that sort of stuff, but we haven't actually put together any direction for administration to actually do this engagement. Now, I think thankfully they're kind of doing it on the periphery, but I think something that this council I think would benefit would be to develop some sort of Indigenous engagement reconciliation type strategy on how we can actually go through and do that. And that's not for tonight, but I think that would help a lot and identify these issues, and something that either this council or maybe the next council looks at is a key pillar to actually identify, okay, who are we going to talk to, what do we want to engage them about, and let's have a robust plan around it. Because right now, as these things kind of pop up, we don't, we're kind of a little bit blinded there. And to Councillor Stout's point, is this 6 months? Is this 12 months? Is this 3 years when we're going to do that? I appreciate where you're coming from. So I think that's something that we need to consider down the road, but not for now. So I just wanted to add that. Sorry, Your Worship.
Nope, no worries. Fair points. Seeing no further hands raised, I guess we'll conclude it and call the question. All in favor that council rescind the July 24, 2018 motion to seek armorial bearings from the Canadian Crown and direct administration to discontinue work related to the development of armorial bearings. All in favor? Councillor Barnhart. That carries 7-1. Councillor Stout opposed. Everybody else in favor.
6-1.
6-1. Why do I always do that? Can't count. 6-1. Councillor Stout opposed. Everybody else in favor. All right, that brings us to item 9, bylaws. There are none. Councillor inquiries and reports. So start with inquiries. Do members of council have questions for administration this evening?
Yes, I have a question. I can't get the buttons operated in time. There we go. I'll raise my hand. I apologize for the interruption.
No worries. Go ahead. You're up.
And the moment I can find the question, I'll read it to you. There we go. So my question was, has there been any progress to report on the implementation of one of the concluding next steps that was recommended in the Beaumont Urban Agriculture Report of 2018? Specifically, some residents have expressed great interest to me and to council in removing the obstructions for the keeping of hens, and I came across one person who apparently keeps quails in Beaumont. The section from the Urban Agriculture Report was made mention that extensive public engagement and education is required if the town wishes to move forward with urban hen keeping. Pilot projects are strongly advised. Thank you.
Theo?
Yeah, if I could refer at least part of this question to our Director of Protective Services. Everett, are you able to take that? I know we spoke about it earlier today, and the information you sent me today, I shared parts of it, as you know, with council, but if you could share with the public.
Certainly. Thank you very much. Let me just pull that up. There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. And through your worship to Councillor Stout, with regards to chickens or backyard hens, they are considered livestock under our current animal control bylaw. That's section 4.12 subsection A. Being livestock, they are prohibited from being within the city of Beaumont unless it's in an area zoned agriculture. That's as the current bylaw sits today. In addition to our planning department and yourselves, of course, Protective Services, we have received a few inquiries from our residents and being contacted about a backyard hen program. And we've communicated with each one of our inquiries the best we can that we are going to be looking into such a program as we start to engage the community later on this fall when we start to look at our community standards bylaw. We'll be doing extensive public engagement with our residents at that time, and it was felt that this would be an excellent opportunity to incorporate such a program into our bylaws. And again, we'll be engaging the public. We'll be there. We'll be asking the questions. It seemed like the best approach for this project.
You can't hear me, can you? Yeah, I got it. Just having button trouble here. Thank you. So there is a backyard hen program being proposed and planned for the fall.
To Councillor Stout, through your worship, we have received inquiries and interest from residents. In the past 12 months, myself, I believe it to be 5 or 6 residents that have engaged me directly. I don't know if these are the same residents that have engaged others. And at the same time, again, looking at it this fall, when we engage our residents on the community standards bylaw, we'll be seeking interest and input at that time for a backyard hen program.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the input to Chief Cook.
Councillor Van Newkirk, question for Min?
Yeah, you bet. Along those same frames, I think the bigger question around that is, urban agriculture as a whole. A hen program is but a mere part of an urban agriculture program. And I think that there was a lot of good information that was brought to council around the different types of urban agriculture that can be that can come forward and be part of Beaumont in the future. I guess probably a question back to Mr. Cook would be around the community standards bylaw update that he referred to, and what is the bigger picture of urban agriculture in Beaumont? Are we, when we open up that community standards bylaw, are we going to be getting into fruit trees and bees and front yard gardens, backyard gardens, side yard gardens, all of the urban agriculture that it was put in front of us in a report? Because I value the larger conversation rather than being myopic and just focusing on on poultry. Just where are we at there?
Mr. Director Cook, you're on mute still.
My apologies. Sorry, new system. I'm at home tonight, so my apologies for that. Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk. Excellent question. Working with our planning department, we've had we'll call it incipient or the beginning conversations of exactly what you're referring to, talking about those bigger conversations as we move forward with the community standards bylaw. As you mentioned, fruit trees and such, side yard gardens, bees is another one that came forward, and of course, backyard hen programs. As we move forward with the community standards bylaw, again, we're looking at starting that up later this summer, early fall. So I'm going to say it'll be early Q3. We'll start that process. We will be working in a committee approach with many of our internal departments to have those bigger discussions. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot more to offer you on that this evening, other than a promise to bring back more information through the CAO when it's available.
Yeah, thank you. And, the only thing I would offer is that I think that, the urban agriculture conversation has been explored in lots of other places, and there's probably lots of examples of the positives and negatives and what worked well and what didn't, and when things didn't work well, what might we have done better and stuff. So yeah, I hope that you'll be able to find your way to some of those conversations and such with our neighbors and through some research with other municipalities. So thank you very much. That's all I got.
Okay, not wanting to turn this into a conversation about what's coming forward in the future. About urban agriculture. Let's just try and get the questions answered and going. Councillor Barnhart, I'm pretty sure you had a comment on this.
No,
Considering
I'm
your
sorry, I won't
frequent
prolong
ramp.
this either, Mayor, but I just want to let Councillor Van Newkirk know that when and if the Regional Agricultural Master Plan is approved by the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Board, each municipality will be required to complete an urban agricultural plan. And I think the timing's perfect. I think it'll work beautifully if all goes according to Hoyle. So thank you for bringing it up, Councillor.
Appreciate it. It's definitely a worthwhile initiative. Before I go on, is just Councillor Monkoff Swain, I know you're wanting to do a quick report, but does anybody else want to further go down that same vein? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Monkoff Swain, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I thought I'd give the folks here a bit of an update on the Edmonton Metro Transit Commission there. We had our first meeting with our new CEO last week. So we welcomed Mr. Paul Janikowski to the commission there. So the first employee of the Regional Transit Commission. And I've done a lot of business in the background leading up to this point. And last week was an important week where we passed quite a few, actually 8 key policies up front. Things like, employee code of conduct policy, respect the workplace policy, diversity inclusion, a bunch of financial reporting policies, etc. So just wanted to share that with the group that the commission is off and running, got the first employee on board, started last week, and Mr. Jankowski is looking forward to getting out to Beaumont, and I know he's meeting with a few folks over the next little while here. And certainly at some point we'll have him in front of council to formally say hello and introduce himself. So I just wanted to give an update on that transit commission. Everything is running along really well, and I'm glad to have our first employee on board. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Yeah, no, do appreciate that. Look forward as they bring on more people in infrastructure to get that program moving forward. So yeah, appreciate you keeping us in the loop on that. Are there any other councillors wishing to make a statement or ask a question of administration this evening? Nope, seeing none, then I will pass it along to the CAO.
Thank you very much, Mayor Stewart, members of council, members of the public. A few items. I'll be quick. As always, I like to talk about the COVID numbers. In the last 7 days, we've had 21 new cases in Beaumont, but we had 47 recoveries. So our active cases sits at 48. 8 days ago, that was 74. So we're definitely going in the right direction. Excuse me. Dr. Hinshaw mentioned this weekend that they had a 4% vaccine no-show rate. Typically, that's between 1% and 3%. What that means is people are making appointments and they're not showing up. She reiterated that no vaccines were wasted, but these are appointments that are being wasted. So urging people to at least honor their appointment. Great news in the province from an R-value perspective, it's sitting at 0.67. So it was over 1 for the longest period of time, including even a week ago. In the Beaumont region, region, we're registering 48% of folks in the region. I talked about this last time. It encompasses part of Leduc County as well. It's how AHS identifies us as a region, not Beaumont City, but 48% of those folks have received their first shot. What's really an interesting number is the age group between 12 and 19 years of age. 60% of that group have received their first shot. So thank you very much, Gen Zs, for stepping up. I think that proves a lot of people wrong on who's estimating or who's valuing these vaccinations and who's not. The lowest number is that group between 20 and 40. So folks, it's very easy to get on a schedule. It's very easy to get the shot. So please do that. Register online or call 811 or whatever mode you need to use to schedule. A couple other things around from an ECDEV perspective, Mike Berezowski passed along to me. And if I mess this up, Mike, please kick in. To date, we've had 35 initial applications for the city's small business support grant program. That's the one the council set some money aside to. It's being administered by the Leduc, Niskayuna, Wetaskiwin and Regional Chamber of Commerce. The program was funded to support up to 40 businesses, but that's only if they all take in the full amount. And it's appearing that that's not the case here. So we're urging businesses, it closes June 15th. Don't wait. If you qualify and this can help you, please sign up for it. And it's being promoted by the city of Beaumont as well as the Beaumont and Leduc chambers. The 2020 annual report to the community has been translated and printed. I believe we put some in your mailboxes, but since you can't go to our building, you can't get them anyway, but we'll get them to you. Saw the hard copy at the end of last week, looks really nice. It will be out in this Friday's Beaumont newspaper as a sleeve. I know council had talked about the notion of mailing it through Canada Post. We found out that would cost us about $8,000. So we've elected to put it in the newspaper instead, and the total for the printout was about $8,000. So we would have had to double the cost. We do have some physical copies available for council members. If you'd like, shoot me an email. Yeah, I should have read that further down, Mike Berezowski or Shalana, and we'll get some copies out to you. And the city of, the last item I have is the city of Beaumont today signed an agreement to participate in what's known as Discover Leduc Regional Tourism Campaign. It's operated by Leduc, Niskayuna, Wetaskiwin chambers. Mike met with the Beaumont Chambers Board this morning where there was a presentation on the initiative and made sure to include in the agreement that the Leduc Chamber will collaborate with the Beaumont Chamber. So the cost was fairly minimal, and we can find it within our existing budget. So it's just something we're trying to do to help our local businesses as well. And that's all I had. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. At this point, it's 7 o'clock. We've been sitting for an hour, and I know we only got really 2 items left on the agenda, or maybe 3. But I'm still going to take a 5-minute break just to give everybody a quick chance to get up and stretch, because one of these conversations could go for quite a bit. So take 5. To reconvene the council meeting Tuesday, the 25th. Which brings us down to item 12B, Town of High River proposed coal restriction policy. As members of council have seen, the council from High River has written us a letter asking us to provide an endorsement for their submission of a coal policy to coal. Hang on, what was it? The Coal Policy Committee, their submission of 3 key principles towards to submit to the Coal Policy Committee in July, and they're looking for councils in the province of Alberta to provide support with that. So I'm not gonna sit there and read the letter, but I am looking to see if a member of council is willing to move a motion to support these 3 key principles. Councilor Barnhart, I see your hands up.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I thought this was covered under the consent agenda.
Mayor Stewart, I just wanted to point out that a motion was passed within the consent agenda.
The coal policy?
No.
No.
For the item.
No. 12A, municipal affairs. I'm looking at my consent agenda now. The council accept municipal affairs 2020 MSI funding confirmation correspondence information. The correspondence from the town of High River was not in the consent agenda because there has to be a decision made.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 12A on the consent agenda in the agenda for this evening.
Yes, and this is 12, sorry, we're on 12B, my fault.
And we have 12B is on the consent agenda, Mayor. We could remove it easily.
An asterisk in it, John, so it looks confusing. I think for clarity, let's just remove it from the consent agenda.
Yep.
Yeah, let's just take, we're gonna have to remove it from the consent, because if I inadvertently put it on the consent agenda, then that was not my intention. And because there needs to be a council decision if we're gonna support this or not, so.
I've removed it off of the consent agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So coming back to it, is there a member of council willing to move a motion to support the town of High River? Councilor Hendricks.
No, I wasn't going to move to support. What I was going to do is just to remind the meeting that when you went through the consent agenda, you went through every specific item. You did come up to 12A, you passed on 12B, right? In your oratory when you walk through there. So 12B was not in your consent agenda request.
That's the way I remember it.
That's correct.
Okay, so I see, ask third and final, is there a member of council willing to move a motion to support the town of High River? Seeing none, moving on. Brings us to item 13A, notice of motion. Councilor Stout, termination. No, Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to members of council. At the May 11, 2021 regular council meeting, Councilor Stout made a notice of motion that read that council direct administration to immediately give 100 days notice of termination to Conduit Business Services Canada's contract for automated traffic enforcement services in Beaumont. This evening, administration is looking for direction on how council wishes to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. So as per normal, when we come up with a notice of motion, we will open it up to the councilor that proposed the notice of motion to make the motion, speak to it. Then we will allow questions and comments from members of council to the councilor making the motion and administration. So Councilor Stout, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Winter, that was at 180 days notice. You were a little bit garbled on my feed. I just want to confirm that was 180 days notice, yes?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Stout, that is correct, 180 days notice.
Thank you. Right, I will speak to the motion.
You need to make the motion too.
Oh, I need to actually read it out? Oh, I'm sorry.
Read the motion into the record, yeah.
In a tangle of procedural hell then. All right, so yes. I'm moving that council direct. I move that council direct administration to immediately give 180 days notice of termination to Conduit Business Services Canada contract for automated traffic enforcement services in Beaumont. In support of that motion, I'm going to start. There's quotation widely attributed to Albert Einstein that definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And we keep renewing Beaumont's ATE program, even though it isn't actually working to make our roads any safer, according to the statistics. So tonight, council has an opportunity to stop that particular insanity. I want to go back, looking at those. The idea that this doesn't improve traffic safety. I want to go back to September 2018 when Alberta Transport commissioned Tantus MNP to do an automated traffic enforcement program review. That was published 10th September 2018. It includes a couple of items that I'm going to draw to your attention, although I believe I drew them to your attention at the time as well. Has ATE, the question the report asked was, has ATE decreased collision rates in the province? Well, from small to mid-sized cities, they defined as 10,000 to 30,000 people. That's Beaumont right in the middle there. And I'm quoting here, there is no statistical relationship. That is, any cause and effect sorry, that is any cause and effect relationship appears to be random. So in other words, there's no correlation at all between ATE use and collision rates that could be detected by that study. Another one that surprised me from that study, and I'm quoting again, rear end collision proportions do appear to increase with the use of ATE. At a provincial level, this is a positive, statistically significant correlation. So in other words, use of ATE actually causes more people to be rear-ended, presumably at stop signs and traffic light and red traffic lights. That came forward there was discussion of that in council in March 2019. At the March 26th, 2019 council meeting, 3 motions were passed by council. The first one, moved by Councillor Daniluk, that council approve an extension to Global Traffic's existing contract until December the 31st, 2019. The second motion that was moved by Councillor Munkoff-Swain, that council direct administration to conduct public engagement on traffic safety and the use of automated traffic enforcement in Beaumont. For whatever reason, that was not executed. There has been no public engagement on that subject. Third motion, moved by me, Councillor Stout, that council direct administration to bring back a traffic enforcement plan to a council meeting by August 2019. That was also not executed, and we have not had the opportunity to discuss or potentially modify such a traffic plan. So on December 31st, 2019, the then contract with Global Traffic Group concluded, the same one that Councillor Daniluk had moved and council had approved an extension until the end of the year. And following an RFP process, Conduent Business Services was selected to continue the ATE contract. I'm advised that at the time it was a choice between Conduent and Global Traffic, as they were the only 2 approved providers in the province. That was a 5-year agreement with an option to extend 2 additional years. So potentially until 2027. In other words, council voted to extend the contract by 6 months or so, but in fact, we've potentially extended it by 7 years. The new contract has a flat fee for each ticket issued, and the dollar amount is confidential, so I won't reveal it. But by doing that, Conduent is incentivized to maximize the number of tickets that they issue, and also incentivized not to provide any real deterrence for traffic offences, because that would reduce the number of tickets they'd be able to issue. There is, on the good side, there is a 180-day sunset clause, which is what my notice of motion addresses, that enables Beaumont or Conduent to terminate the program after 180 days without a penalty. At the last Committee of the Whole meeting, we received a Beaumont Municipal Detachment Report 2020 to 2021 year-end policing report. Within it, there's a line item showing motor vehicle collisions in Beaumont as detected and reported by the RCMP. Drew attention to it at the Committee of the Whole meeting. I drew council's attention to it at the Committee of the Whole meeting. I'll note that in 2016 we had 167 motor vehicle collisions. That 2017 that went up by 25%. 2018 that went up by 33% compared to 2016. 2019 that went up by 23% compared to 2016. And 2020 that went up by 5% at 2016. The last smaller increase was, of course, during a year when we had pandemic restrictions in place, so the volume of traffic was increased. And as I also noted at the meeting, that saw a 38% decrease in provincial traffic offences compared to 2020. Comparing 2020 to 2016. So traffic offences went down 38%, but number of collisions went up 5% in 2020 compared to 2016. If this is improving road safety, if this is reducing the number of traffic, if ATE reduces the number of traffic collisions, then there must be something else causing it to increase an awful lot. We also received a City of Beaumont Automated Traffic Enforcement Plan, May 2021. Well, this is more of a report than a plan, at the Committee of the Whole meeting. I want to draw your attention to a couple of lines in that. One, automated traffic, and I'm quoting again, automated traffic enforcement ATE technology has been conducted within the city of Beaumont since '98 to deter speeding and to improve traffic and officer safety. Those are the goals of it. ATE combined with conventional speed enforcement methods such as education and awareness can help reduce the number and severity of collisions on our roads. And finally, the use of this technology includes ongoing evaluation to measure the effectiveness of the program on lowering speeds and reducing collisions. However, in the same report, there's some collision data. And I'm quoting again, using data collected from the Alberta e-collision system, it has been determined that there were 72 collisions at or near ATE zones within the city of Beaumont municipal boundaries in 2020. This is an overall increase of 22%. That's an increase of 22% from the 59 collisions recorded in 2019. Again, our own systems show an increase. So we know that ATE doesn't and hasn't worked to improve traffic safety in Beaumont. So why are we still using it? Are we, do we conform with Einstein's definition of insanity there? Well, there is deterrence, of course. Wouldn't easily visible ATE vehicles operating at publicly announced locations help to deter traffic offences? I'm going to quote again from the same report. The City of Beaumont has considered making automated traffic enforcement vehicles more visible to aid in easy identification. However, due to operator safety concerns, no markings have been applied to any vehicles. But of course, we have kind of incentivized them not to do, the contractor not to do that. Excuse me. There's also a disclaimer in the on the published locations of the photo radar sites. I'm going to read that. It says additional photo enforcement locations may be added on any of the above dates. Photo enforcement may occur on dates and at locations within the city not listed above. Now that's in sharp contrast to what they're doing in Edmonton. Now I'm going to read to you from the Edmonton Journal, 2nd of December 2019. City unveils 28 new look photo radar vehicles to improve visibility. The journal article says Jessica Lamar, the city's acting director of traffic safety, said these changes are a result of consistent feedback from residents asking for more transparency to the city's automated enforcement program. The vehicles will now be easier to see and will also be subject to new parking regulations to ensure visibility. The commitment would be to parking in transparent locations so that drivers can see them, she said. This move is about listening to Edmontonians and increasing safety through visibility and awareness. But that's Edmonton, not Beaumont. So if we don't reduce collision rates and we've not committed to making this an ATE an effective deterrent, why are we still using ATE? Doing the same things year after year and expecting a different, better result. Well, there is the estimated $378,600 revenue that I think I'll find in this year's budget. Could we afford to terminate the program and forego this revenue? That's 0.66% of total revenue. So that's one part in 150, almost a rounding error. Traffic safety capital reserves by year end at the same budget are projected at $1,044,872. So that's 210% of that revenue. No, that must be more. I've got that number wrong. And yes, we could easily afford it if we have the will to stop using it. Other municipalities around us have come to the same recognition and are no longer using ATE. Leduc has just discontinued it. Strathcona County discontinued it some years ago. As far as I can find, Leduc County have never used it. I spoke to Mayor Ray Ralph of Devon recently, and he tells me that he's been trying to end it since he was elected. Edmonton persists with ATE, but they do make a realistic attempt to maximize the deterrent value by marking the vehicles and by making the locations very public. If we continue to use ATE as we currently do, then Beaumont becomes a lonely island of hidden traffic penalties that we all actually know do nothing to reduce collisions or improve traffic safety. So I got to urge councillors to vote in favour of this motion and stop the insanity tonight. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor, for your opening comments. Just a reminder to council that the discussion before us is on the motion, not on things we can do to change the ATA program to improve it or make it better. Councillor Stout did a number of things from a number of other municipalities, and I don't want to see this get us dragged off topic. But I will now open it up to questions, comments for members of council, for administration and council. Okay, seeing no hands, I do have a quick question for administration. Just a quick query. Did we have legal take a quick look at what it would take to get out of this contract?
Certainly, yes. Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Actually, we just got some information later today. As I had mentioned earlier in an email, that the contract calls for 180 days notice period. So we would obviously likely be on the hook for the 180 days worth of what the regular earnings would be. And I think that equated, I can't remember the number I shared with you, but I could dig it up. But what we've also found after a legal review, and Everett can correct me because he's the one that asked the question, that we would also quite likely be on the hook for any associated costs for early termination of leases and or the amortized rate of any equipment or vehicles that were purchased. So we have confirmed today that Conduit, in fact, leases their trucks and leases their equipment. They thankfully do not subcontract out their workers because we could possibly be on the hook for that. So we're in year one of a 5-year lease agreement. We would quite likely be on the hook for those additional costs as well. Mr. Cook, did I miss anything there?
Thank you, CAO. No, you didn't. The only thing I think I could add to that is that I'll call it a penalty, if you will, may not be the right term to use, but the additional cost to the city of Beaumont for exercising the 180-day exit clause is only for the first 3 years. After year 3, though they don't, those penalties or those payouts do not apply any longer.
Thank you. That's an important clarification.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I see hands from Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Hendricks. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Stout, for bringing it forward. I think you did a very fine job of making your case there. Coming into this discussion, I really felt I would be not in favor of canceling it. Now I'm sitting on the fence, and I guess I'm concerned about the fact that, in my perception, having the ability to address speeding, I'll say address, I don't think we can ever prove that we prevented anything. Proving prevention is very difficult, because if something doesn't happen, you can't count it. And for me, this has always been a deterrent to speeding. My foot gets heavy in my little red car, so sometimes I don't want to get a ticket. And so deterrent is why I think it's a good thing to have. My fear would be that the announcement is made, we no longer have this deterrent, and therefore, we're going to see if it's a bylaws officer in a car. If he's not there, we're going to speed. And I worry about that. And I do think speed kills. And so I'm all for speed limits and their enforcement. I know we're still going to have people on the street in the cars, but again, I'm not sure I can be totally satisfied that this isn't going to increase speeding. Whether that speeding leads to collisions, we can't measure something like that. We can't measure something that doesn't happen. So I'm on the fence. You've done a very effective job of giving me some more things to think about. My question to the administration would be, what are the impacts besides financial to doing this?
Excellent. I can, CAO, did you want to?
Oh, go right ahead, Everett. This is your area.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. To Councillor Barnhart through your worship, thank you for your question. The impacts to us would be we would need the city of Beaumont would need to take a really good look at what we're going to do to replace the type of enforcement that we currently that we would lose with the loss of ATE. Councillor Barnhart, you make an excellent comment around we'll never be able to gauge exactly what we've prevented. That could be speeding or accidents or with children in the community, of course, with just ATE being there. We can't count that. I can tell you that the city, or pardon me, the province is working still at bringing forward data, or pardon me, a modification to the ATE program to collect data. And those are workshops I've commented on before that took place in late 2019 and early 2020. I don't have any new information to bring forward with that tonight, other than the service providers are starting to send some of that data or some of the data they collect to the province, so we can start to get that new sense of data gathering in place, and then we can use that to help better the data and the stats that are presented to council and our residents on ATE. So going back to your question, we would really need to have a look at what we want to do. Do we want to maintain the same type of presence at 40 hours in the community of traffic enforcement only? What would that look like? Would we have to hire our dedicated RCMP officers, not general duty officers, but dedicated traffic officers, along with additional peace officers who can issue anywhere between 8 to 10 tickets in an 8-hour shift? Then we also have the addition of administrative staff to provide the support that would have to write up the tickets, court briefs, and then of course time away for those officers if a ticket was challenged. Those are the impacts we would be looking at. Timeline on having an answer back to council if automated traffic enforcement was to stop in the city of Beaumont. How long would it take to put those measures in place? Again, more officers. With the RCMP, it's up to a year. With municipal enforcement officers, we're under a year. We can control that a little bit better. But then again, there's other assets like capital purchases for units and radar guns and systems as well. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Thank you, Chief Cook. I guess it leaves me with, we have found a relatively efficient way to do it, and we're going to replace it with a labor-intensive method of still doing it. It's not going to save us money then. It's actually going to cost us more money.
I can't provide you that a solid answer if it would cost us more money or not. I can't say that tonight. I'd have to look at those numbers specifically, but I do want to remind council that ATE is deployed or employed in areas that are of high risk to officers. So for example, 50th Street, south of 50th Avenue, where it's narrow and there's not many places to actually conduct a safe traffic stop. Those are the types of areas where AT is used. Of course, we never want to replace officer contact, because that could lead into uncovering other things that law enforcement does. But if that's something council desires, we could have a look at what it would cost to actually replace ATE with officers on the streets.
Thank you, Chief Cook.
Councillor Hendricks, your hand was up, it's down. Did you drop it?
Nothing further at this time, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll go with Councillor Monkoff Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Dunlop. And then I'll wait another one.
Thanks, Worship. So I appreciate it's the 11th hour in terms of finding out that information, that not only is the clause not just 180 days, but we're on the hook for leases and equipment and all that sort of stuff. That's a cost. I don't think that's a prohibitive measure for us to make this decision. I think it's a conversation whether we support ATE or not. We can figure that out on the other end. But that does add complexity to this, the legal implications. But maybe I'll ask a direct question, and maybe I'll apologize in advance to council staff for putting you on the spot. But you read out those motions that we had previously, and one of those motions was to conduct public engagement, and you voted for that previously. Now you're bringing a motion forward to cancel, basically to effectively ignore that and not go through. I appreciate that administration didn't complete that engagement. So I'm just curious as to why you thought engagement was necessary a couple of years ago, but now is not.
Well, I guess my response is that, thank you, Your Worship. I guess my response is that, yes, I did vote for that. And yes, I believe it was necessary at the time, but I didn't ignore it. It was ignored by administration or whomever. There has to be a statute of limitations on this. That's more than 2 years ago now. And we have had no advice, or we haven't had, the public engagement hasn't occurred, nor have I seen a plan to make it occur. We have an election in October, so even if we initiated it now, I'm not necessarily sure that any of us would be back sitting in these seats to hear it when the results of it when it did occur.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up, and I recognize that the timing here, you mentioned the word election. I think the challenge for me is, we thought it was a good idea to get the input from the public, and certainly heard it from all sides, or I should say both sides of this. Whether depending on, no matter which way you land on it, I've heard feedback from that, but I haven't seen that summarized in front of me. And that's what worries me, I guess, with this decision. I think Chief Cook made the pertinent point that to the good question from Councillor Barnhart, that okay, if not the ATE, then how do you replace it? And without knowing that data, I don't know how I can move forward with this. So I was curious around, obviously the A, and I've mentioned this before, stands for automated, right? So if we're not, we have to replace that with people. And are we taking now people off the street to do this? Or are we having to add more bodies? And I appreciate, Director Cook, you haven't been able to quantify that at this time. I think that's what the engagement would A, give administration time to collect that data, and B, give a chance for the public to weigh in on this. And you're right, Councillor Stout, it probably wouldn't be back in time in order for this particular council to make that decision. That's unfortunate, and you acknowledged that up front, that we should have had this earlier on. So that's just my initial thoughts and questions. I see other hands up here, but those are my initial concerns with this off the bat.
May I respond? Just to, or do you want me to summarize at the end?
You summarize at the end.
Okay.
I don't want to start going in a circle here, and if they ask you a direct question, sure. If not, we'll just let them say their piece, and then we'll get back to it. But I will give you the opportunity to close as it is your motion. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Danlock.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Martin, for bringing the notice of motion forward. I guess what I would say is this notice of motion did catch me by surprise, though. In response to a Leduc article in the news, you're asking, where's the conversation at in Beaumont? And that Leduc article in the news comes up in March 2021. And as was already noted, the conversation back in March 2019, as you said, had two motions in it, and you supported both of them. And in fact, you made one of them. You supported the motion to conduct public engagement, as Councillor Malkoff-Swain noted, and as you've responded to. But then you also, said, put a motion forward to bring back a traffic enforcement plan by August 2019, and that didn't occur. Sure. You've stated that. I didn't notice you checking in on that August 2019 miss. We're sitting here in May 2021, 20 some months later, and the conversation is upon us now. So if there was no public engagement, have you a plan to do that in the future or not? We can't have those conversations now because of that. Your Worship, just a question of admin and then a question of Councillor Stout. Is that okay?
Sure, yep.
So we talked about the cost to cancel the project. Has administration been able to peg a dollar value on that yet? I know all this information is pretty new. It didn't sound like it, but do we understand the dollar values with any of the quantitative pieces, around the 3 year, the 180 days, no income for 3 years? Do we, can we put some numerical value to this besides the unknown numerical values?
Excellent. Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, as recently as 5:30 this evening, I was on the phone with Conduit looking for a dollar value or figure for council. Unfortunately, the individuals who we deal with locally, he wasn't in the office, and the ones that he was reaching out to were unable to get him anything by this evening. We are looking for that exact number right now for council. Once we have it, we can, through the CIO, of course, definitely pass that information along.
Mhm. Okay, guess the direct, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just saw the CAO had his hand raised.
Oh, sorry, I missed the CAO. Go ahead, CAO.
I just wanted to clarify a number that was used earlier around the annual revenues for ATE. And Councillor Stout, you're correct. Back in 2019, it was in the $380,000 range. We have restructured the contract. In fact, one of the biggest advantages of going with Conduit was it was a different rate. It's now a flat rate per ticket. So our revenues for 2021 are projected to be $650,000. And that's a result of the renegotiations that Director Cook did with Conduit.
That's
Yeah, so a couple of questions, I guess, for Councillor Stout. First one, pointed question around what instead. So by putting this notice of motion forward, I'm assuming that you have some other means in mind to keep the level of safety high around schools, parks, and playgrounds. What did you have in mind around schools and parks and playgrounds if we're removing this means right now?
Specifically, I don't have anything in mind other than regular traffic enforcement by RCMP or by bylaw as necessary. I'm not sure why we would need to replace a program that does not achieve its stated goals of reducing collisions by another program.
Okay, yeah, no, fair.
My point about cancelling the program is it simply doesn't achieve its own stated goals by its own stated objectives, as far as we can measure it.
Yeah, I can see, trying to find statistics for things is very difficult in this scenario. But what I can say is that when I see a vehicle, when I see a ATE vehicle sitting there, I lift my foot and I slow down. So I don't need statistics to, to tell me that I know that. And that's just where I'm at. So, and then the next question, I guess, would be, big picture. One of the things that I've heard you speak about on the, need to keep expenditures tight, need to, keep, be fiscal with our dollars and cents. You're going to be moving from a profit scenario to a increased boots on the ground scenario, because if we did look at numbers and you did, spreadsheet it out and figure out how many hours of ATE are on the ground, make a table, make a chart and figure out how many hours of that is that you would be replacing. So, the conversation that I wanted to have that we haven't been able to have is around, locations. And the report tells us that the locations are determined by the RCMP, but, I still believe that we could have some conversations to say, hey, this is what Beaumont Council wishes if we were to get into a direction and make it about safety, which is playgrounds, parks, school zones, and, and construction zones and such, right? So, so by doing this, you're moving from a profit scenario to a cost scenario. And for me, the dollars and cents isn't where it's at, but I do need to point that out. That's just the fact of it. And I guess in closing, I'm struggling to support this notice of motion because the conversations that we voted to have haven't happened. The public engagement hasn't happened, and I don't think this is a slam dunk politically either, Councillor Stout. When I talk to people, it's pretty much a 50-50 issue from me. So on the political side, that's what I would say to that. And on the other side of things, when we're having to jump to the cancellation and not have the traffic enforcement plan and those pieces that we voted for in front of us to say, if not this, then what? We don't have that in front of us. So tonight we have, the cost of the cancellation. We have a switching to a cost scenario that we don't know the cost yet. We have a plan that will need to come into place if ATE isn't here anymore, that we don't have. We don't have that plan. We haven't been able to have that conversation. And we, in fact, haven't had the conversation with the public. So, statistics aside and that aside, I'm struggling to support the notice of motion for those reasons. So that's where my head's at right now. And hoping to hear from some other councillors.
Councillor Newkirk, Councillor Danluck, followed by myself, and that'll close out round one, and then we'll see people for round two. I see some hands up. Councillor Danluck.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I appreciate that. I think Councilman Newkirk read my mind almost line by line from his comments. So for the sake of brevity, I won't go through all of his comments again. I wholeheartedly agree with everything Councilman Newkirk had stated in his comments, as well as councillors before me. Since the notice of motion was given by Councillor Stout, I had two people actually phone me to express their request that we support the motion. And I asked them both point blank, if you see a photo radar truck, do you slow down? They said, yes, we do. I don't want to get a ticket. So as a deterrent, they said, well, yeah, but I don't like how it's being done. I get that. It's an emotional issue as opposed to, it should be a safety issue. And I firmly believe that photo radar is a deterrent factor. Could it be done more differently? I think it could be done more effectively and more transparently. I agree with that. I'm going to not go down that path, as Mayor Stewart mentioned, stay on topic. I'm going to stay on topic, not trying to fix the program. But I myself, I try not to speed, but if I see a photo radar truck, I do look at my speedometer, I take my foot off, make sure I'm not speeding. To me, it's a deterrent, especially around schools, playgrounds, and those areas that automation does help us and allows our police to be boots on the ground fighting crime. Speeding is a crime in some ways, it is, but it's not exactly a break and enter and other things that the police are really what we need them to be doing in our community. So for the sake of brevity for round one, Mayor Stewart, I'll stop at that comment, but I do think the deterrent factor is a strong one. Most people I talk to don't like to get tickets, but if I speed, I got a ticket, they understand. So there's a lot of support, I think, for photo radar. They don't make how it's done, maybe. It's not cricket, as some of my English friends would say, but it is still a deterrent factor. I think it's a strong one. So thank you for round one.
Thank you very much, Councilor Danluck. So I do believe that after listening to all the comments and conversation, that a grander conversation around the program itself needs to be had, if not by this council in the time we have left, then in the next councils early on in their mandate. But for myself, I'm not going to repeat all the points that Councilor Margot Swain and Councilor Newkirk and Councilor Danluck have spoken to. For me, this has always been, ATA has always been a tool, and the tool has to be employed properly. And to be honest, I haven't always been in favor of the tactics that were carried out by the previous contractor. But for me, the proof here is that since Conduit's been on board, we haven't had any, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard from any resident or heard from administration that we're having lots of complaints about how AT enforcement is being carried out and going on. Second, I'd just like to remind council that we're also in the middle of a big provincial review as to the future of the ATE program in the province of Alberta by the provincial government. And so if you vote to kill it tonight, the odds of our ever getting one back are probably slim to nil, because you can't get one going right now. So if we want to see the outcome of that and take that into account, then we need to defeat this motion tonight and keep it going. Myself, like as I said before, though, for me, it's always been a tool, and I would need a plan to replace what's going on to be able to vote in favor of this tonight. Although for me, it's all about safety. So that'll close out round one. Looking at the speaker list, I have Councillor Munkoff Swain, followed by Councillor Hendricks, and then seeing no other requests to speak, we'll give it to Councillor Stout to close out and then call a question. Councillor Munkoff Swain.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And just to be consistent, whenever I'm voting against the motion, I want to explain why. And to me, very simple. I voted to get public input. We haven't got that, so I'm looking forward to administration carrying that out and recognize that that'll be in front of the next term, and that's okay. I don't want to make a decision here without that input. I'm also looking forward to seeing what the provincial review comes back on this. and I'd rather wait for that as well. So for those two very, very simple reasons, I want to hear what the public has to say. We all thought it was a good idea before. I still think it's a good idea. So I'll be voting against this motion and wait for the administration to conduct that input and yeah, leave it at that. Thank you.
Councilor Hendricks.
Your worship, for me, it's more the process. We have a process. This council voted on a process, and we should follow the process. Like to get to the finish line with process, and I don't think that we should just abandon that at this time. The idea that we have to maintain or watch our own emotions, that's new in terms of timing and where things are at, and if things are moving along, or maybe all motions need to be watched and administered by our own council. I would hope not, but that's what I'm hearing tonight. How about make this a plebiscite matter? Stick it on the October ballot. Yes or no, up or down, right? Let the people decide. It's a tax. Yes, it must be preventative. That's all we keep hearing, and certainly we got to make sure that the safety of our officers are absolutely paramount. However, it's still a tax, given the amount of revenue that's coming in. It comes from somebody, it comes from taxpayers. So why not put it on the ballot box? Give us from now till October to get this public engagement going. I mean, it's good grief. We have lots of time between now and October to get this done. So let's get it done. Put it on the ballot. Let people decide. It might draw people out to vote. One more thing to talk about, right?
Thank you very much, Councilor Hendricks. Leave it to Councilor Stout to close, and then we'll call the question.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just going to respond to a couple of comments that were made that I feel I should respond to. The first one is that, yeah, as I think I've already suggested, a program to make us safe that doesn't improve safety doesn't need to be replaced, does it? We won't be any less safe without it than we were with it, which is why I don't have a program to replace it. We've got 180 days. If we feel that we do need to have something to replace it, then we can discuss what that would take and bring forward measures, which would bring us to, I think, November of this year. In response to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's comment about my motion to bring forward, to have administration bring forward a plan for automated traffic enforcement by 2019. Yes, you are correct. I missed that. I should have acted sooner, and that's my error and my regret. And I can't do anything but own that. In response to Councillor Danlux and others who mentioned that when they see a photo radar truck, they slow down. I do too, by the way, but that's in Edmonton, because I can see them there. And actually, I don't automatically slow down. I look at my speed and check that I'm not actually speeding first, but it's still a deterrent. But we can't do that in Beaumont because they're not marked, they're hidden there. And again, we can't, as discussed, we're not discussing what we could do to improve the program or to make it into a deterrent. But I don't believe that it is one in Beaumont at the moment, and certainly not as compared to Edmonton. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stout. So we'll call the question. All those in favor of Councillor Stout's motion that council direct administration to immediately give 180 days notice of termination to Conduit, I can't remember the name, Business Associates? Where's the clerk? I want to get this right.
Conduit Business Services Canada.
Conduit Business Services Canada of our contract for automated traffic enforcement services with them. All in favor, all opposed? And the motion is defeated 5-2. Councillors Hendricks and Stout in favor, all others opposed. Very much. All right, so that brings us to closed session. Just before we go into closed session, actually, we'll do a quick temperature check to see, but as a reminder, under section 197.3 of the MGA, council is prohibited from passing a resolution or bylaw during a closed session meeting or during a closed session meeting. If there's a direction or a decision reached or needed to be reached, the council will revert back to an open meeting to the public, and the direction will be recorded in the public minutes. For those members of the public, question?
Sorry, Mayor Stewart. We removed item 14B off of the agenda, and the 14A was covered on the consent agenda, so I don't see any need to go into closed session this evening.
Yeah, we did, but normally sometimes when we accept for information, if council has quick questions, then we allow them to ask the quick questions. And that was where I'm going, but right now I'm just trying to give the public some information on why we go into closed session.
Perfect.
Where was I? FOIP outlines items that would allow a council to close a meeting, which include matters where public disclosure could be harmful to the following section. Following interests: third-party business interests, third-party personal privacy, individual or public safety, law enforcement, intergovernmental relations, economic or other interests. And as has been just been noted, we did accept this for information. So I guess the question is, do members of council have questions about the regional initiatives report? Do we need to go into closed session? You don't have to ask your question now, but it'd be a quick raise of hand. Seeing none, so we will not be going into closed session tonight, which brings us to Dermot, because item 14B got pulled. So thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time and energy tonight. We had some good discussions around a number of topics that are very pivotal in our community. And so at this point, we will see you all at the first meeting in June.